Welcome to the news and why it matters. I am Sarah Gonzalez. Glenn, what was the top story for you today?
Top story today, I'm torn. It's either the Dow, the loss, massive loss in the Dow today, but I think the loss of affection for one another, a new study that is out, is equally or more disturbing.
All right, Stu.
As we kind of watch the world burn to the ground, we should stop for a moment and realize that it actually doesn't suck as much as we think it does.
Ooh, all right, Jason.
I was just watching Glenn's monologue on the show today, and it got me thinking. And it's really easy to know, if you follow the connections, where this anti-Semitism is coming from in the Democratic Party. It's a slow, methodical, and deliberate infiltration. And I'm calling it now. If Bernie Sanders becomes president, that will be their endgame.
Stu, did you pick up on?
Jason always has to tell us how he came up with the idea for this topic. It's like a Jason, like a copyright.
I was listening to Glenn
yes, it's
while
always,
I was on my way to work, and I just happened to be driving, and
it's researcher language.
Obviously a lot to get into. First, I want to thank our sponsor, FreedomWorks. So we all know that DC liberals are trying to import socialism to America. They're not quiet about it anymore. But what many don't know is that HHS Secretary Alex Azar is actually he's helping their cause by trying to let foreign countries dictate the prices of your medication. Doing this will obviously lead to shortages of vital medicines and set medical research back decades. And then it's going to make it harder for researchers to find cures for terrible diseases like diabetes, Alzheimer's, cancer. I know I didn't sign up for foreign governments meddling with my health care. Did you? I'm thinking the answer is no. Thankfully, FreedomWorks is doing everything they can to sound the alarm and stop Azar's experiment in socialized medicine in its tracks. They cannot do it by themselves. They need your help. We are asking you to go to www.freedomworks.org/news. Tell Secretary Azar to fix patients, not prices. Obviously, tying the prices of your medicine to other countries does not put America first. It will leave countless Americans to die while they wait for treatments that may never be discovered, all thanks to these terrible regulations coming out of Azar's HHS department. We have got to fight this with everything we have. It's going to take every single person listening to do it. Go to www.freedomworks.org/news and tell Secretary Azar to put America first. Fix patients, not prices. All right, Glenn.
So we're going to talk about the Dow dropping tomorrow on radio and kind of go into the ramifications. And I don't know why the president is fooling with this. But I think economies come and go. They go up and they go down. There is another pattern that repeats itself, and it repeats itself about every 80 to 100 years. And it is a dangerous pattern, and it always comes back with socialism. And that is anti-Semitism and viewing people as vermin or less than human. I'm going to show you a poll that was done. It was actually a paper that was written by a couple of researchers on lethal mass partisanship. Lethal mass partisanship. What they found, just over 42% of the people in each party view the opposition as downright evil.
Jeez.
That means 48% of our country believes that our 48 million votes in our country are people say they are evil. Okay, gets worse. 20%, that's 1 out of every 5 Republicans and Democrats, agree with the statement that their political adversaries lack the traits to be considered fully human.
Jeez.
Now, when you are not fully human, that's what leads you to, as we talked about on the TV show today, that's why Louis Farrakhan calls Jews termites, because you exterminate termites. We know what happens when you dehumanize people. Next one. Do you think we'd be better off as a country if large numbers of the opposing party died today? Okay? 20% of the Democrats, 16% of the Republicans think on occasion that the country would be better off if large numbers of the opposition just died.
That's unbelievable.
That is terrifying.
Imagine like the process mentally of clicking yes to that poll or answering yes. I mean, that's not, it's got, the number's got to be higher. There's got to be some percentage who are thinking yes, but are not going to admit it.
So there's a couple of things. Let me give you one last. What if the opposing party wins in 2020 in the presidential election? How much do you feel violence would be justified then? 18% of Democrats, 13% of Republicans say violence would be justified on a scale ranging from a little to a lot. Now, a couple of things. First of all, extraordinarily dangerous trend. Second, if you look at it, and I want Stu, because you're such a numbers guy, I want you to take this report home tonight and really break it out. But what jumped out of the page to me is, again, in all of the ones where they are separating Republicans and Democrats, the Democrats are the ones more filled with hatred, dehumanizing traits, and violence. If you see on the would it be best if, the country would be better off if large numbers of the opposition just died. That's 20% of Democrats and 16% of Republicans. Remember, what is it, 18 or 19% is the tipping point. So the Democrats are over it and the Republicans are approaching it. A tipping point of 20% of the American population is enough to steer us into genocide. This is really, really not good. The idea that we are not fully human, that we are evil. If you look at this, and I want you to verify this tomorrow, Stu, but if you look at this, the party out of power is the most likely to say that we should be violent. My theory is that that's not entirely true because this is coming from the New York Times and they're writing their views of this study. And for the little that you did see, the left and right, it's consistently Republicans are lower than Democrats. That could be because the Republicans are in power, but it also could be that the Republicans are not socialists, and socialists generally, it leads you to this kind of thinking and that kind of mass death.
Yeah, because I mean, if you go back to, when Republicans were not in power and you saw all of the Tea Party movements, there wasn't violence. Right, there wasn't violence in any of those.
No, you have a group of people today. I shared on radio that the shooter in Colorado at the STEM school, one of the shooters had a long record of violence and violent speech against Republicans, hated Donald Trump, and was way down the road of hate with politics and the left as their cause. The partner, the transgender individual that shot up the school with him, his father was an illegal alien who had been deported twice. The media does not report on their side. We saw how they tried to make the Covington kids look like, homicidal maniacs, but they are not talking about the real homicidal maniacs that do exist in America. And if it was on the right, I would call them out. I think the neo-Nazis are homicidal maniacs in practice. But that's not on the right. That, I believe, is on the left. The left has them. And it is historically speaking, it is always from the socialist left in the last 150 years.
Reminds me of a Pew Research poll that they did, I think like 3 years ago. And it showed this graph. It showed basically Republicans are the left and the right in two big balls. and it showed that the Republicans and Democrats, they were pretty close to each other, and there was a big middle ground all the way up through like the mid 90s. Mm-hmm. But and that's how it looked like in the 90s. They were overlapped. The extremes were relatively small, but sometime in the 2000s, those began to radically go apart from each other at a crazy speed. To today, they are pretty much fully separate, and they traced when that split occurred, and it was late 2004. And I thought that was interesting. I went through and looked at some of the things that might have been springing up around then.
Cindy Sheehan time, Michael Moore.
Facebook came in 2004. Then you started getting Snapchat, you started getting Twitter, all that stuff, literally within a year of each other. And Pew Research kind of called it out. They said this ideological silos. Like we're being ideologically siloed. We're getting put into echo chambers. Now it's like radically push it. We don't read the other side's viewpoint. It's easy to dehumanize when we don't even listen to them.
Well, there is a problem though that, I mean, I don't feel I've changed, and I don't feel generally speaking, the constitutional conservative has changed. What I'm standing for today is pretty much the same thing that, you know, George Washington and others were standing for. What's changed is the left has gone to the brink of insanity. I mean, where you're talking about abortion 5 minutes prior to, that's not even reasonable. How can I compromise with somebody on that? You're talking about the end of the free market system. How can I compromise on that? You can compromise on, we should spend a little more on welfare, we should spend a little less on, war or whatever. But we're talking about a group of people now that I haven't really moved to an extreme. The culture and the left has dragged us to this extreme position that is being held in the media that makes me look extreme, but no, I haven't moved. Most Americans, I don't think, have.
Yeah. Still, apparently, a lot of us think that we're in very dire times. From what Glenn is saying, but you're saying that's not true.
Well, I mean, it's true in that sense, I think, completely, right? I mean, I think it's very true that we are separating that way, and I think that discourse and a lot of that stuff is really negative right now. And that's why I'm kind of bringing this up today, because it's frustrating. We over time begin to totally lose contact with what we're all sort of like moving towards. And I think if we would have pitched these sorts of things, these sorts of results 10 or 15 or 20 or 50 years ago, we would have been thrilled and would have signed up in a second. Probably thought they were all impossible. Let me give you some of the breakdowns. We'll start with the old-timey ones, and we'll move a little bit more current. Again, should you be so negative if this is your reality? Life expectancy in 1870 was 30 years old. Today,
1870.
Yeah, that's pretty. I mean, it's relatively late. Today, it's 72, and improving quickly. It's much higher in the more advanced countries. Next up, we have a percentage in extreme poverty. In 1820, 90% lived in extreme poverty. Today, that number is 10%.
Wow.
Huge.
Full reversal.
Yeah.
Full reversal. Next up, we have, let's see, illiteracy percentage. In 1800, 88% of people couldn't read. Today, that number is 13%. Again, a massive, massive improvement. Not perfect. We want it to be 0%, but again, a massive improvement.
And this is across the world, or the country?
Globally, yes. Child death before the 5th birthday. I mean, think about this one for a second.
Wow.
In 1800, we lived in a world where 43% of all children born died before the age of 5. Like, that is an incomprehensible world to me. Think about how we reacted, and rightfully so, to Sandy Hook, right? Where first graders were gunned down in that horrible, horrible attack. Like, that was the norm. I mean, that was like the regular life for everybody. Maybe not in that violent way, but that's what happened
That
to
their
kids.
children died.
Yeah, you just expected when you had kids, a bunch, probably about half of them were going to die before they turned 5. Well, that's changed considerably, as you may know. Now it's down to 4%, from 43 to 4. We also have, let's see, what's next? Percentage that has access to democracy, some level of control over their own government. In 1816, it was 0.87%, and you historians out there might know where those people lived. There was about one place on Earth where it actually existed.
Canada?
Yes,
Venezuela?
Canada. Yeah, Venezuela is where it was. Today, it's 56%. Again, not I would like it to be 96 or 100, but a lot of progress there.
And democracy is Venezuela as well today.
It depends on if I would certainly would include that, and I did not go through the methodology to see how much. I mean, I don't think you include obviously Venezuela. I would be surprised if they did as well. 56% is. I mean, considering you have 20% of the world's population basically living in China, like you're starting from a deficit. But I mean, it's much improved. Now, but that's a lot of people would say, okay, yes, we all know things have gotten better since the 1800s. Like we have electricity now, we have phones now. This is no big, thing. However, let's look for much more recent history. This is since the year 2000, so the turn of the century. How have things improved? GDP per person is up 52%. Across the globe. Infant mortality rate is down 38% across the globe. Undernourished population is down 27% across the globe. The maternal mortality rate down 36% across the globe. And extreme poverty is down 55%. And you have to put an asterisk by that one because that's a 2011 number. It's almost certainly improved much more than that since. These are things that legitimately should lead the news every day.
Well, they should be the things that everyone should look at somebody who says, we've got to abandon the free market system. And everyone should go, excuse me, how do you justify that with these kinds of changes in the globe?
And that quickly, right? I mean, we're talking since George W. Bush was president, when we've gone through a massive recession here, in the United States and globally. I mean, it's been worse globally than it was here. I will throw in one more thing, which is, to tie it to the news of today, is one of the main, I would argue, the largest cause for all of those improvements you've seen is free trade. And the fact that we are looking at reversing that is a real negative. Forget the election, forget our economy here, which is, I believe, also been very helped by free trade over the years. The global picture is a miracle. And I think the largest chunk of that, there's spread of capitalism, which is a big part of that. There's, certain moves towards democracy and freedom that have contributed as well. But I mean, I really think free trade is the number one thing that is responsible for those changes when it comes to, human economic policy.
May I ask you a question? When it comes to free trade, I am totally with you. However, China building concentration camps, and we're not doing it for any of these reasons, but China, we shouldn't be doing as much business with China as we are. They are in slave labor, they are building concentration camps, they are trying to take over the world with information and make it a police state where they control all the information. It is a different situation with China, isn't it? Should we not be doing things?
Yeah, I mean, quickly, I don't think this is the right approach to do something. You're right, they do things that I do not approve of. However, this is, I don't think this would be the right way to attack it. We can go into this longer and more depth at another time we have more time.
Yeah, all right, back in a minute.
Hashtag Tarifageddon is what you're saying.
Tell you about that.
Before we move on, I want to thank our sponsor, Relief Factor. Relief Factor has done wonders for me. I have neck issues, back issues from a car accident, and I tried everything under the sun because I was just in constant pain, and it's the only thing that has done any sort of difference for me. Glenn, I know it's worked wonders for you as well.
Yeah, I don't make cortisol anymore. My body just doesn't make cortisol. So that's a really interesting experience. And my doctors have told me about a year ago, don't exercise. You cannot exercise. And I'm like, that's not good. And now I'm exercising. I exercised again today and feel really, really good. I still don't make cortisol, but boy, I can handle the pain every day because I started taking Relief Factor.
You can go to relieffactor.com right now. Get the 3-week quick start pack. It's $19.95. 70% of the people who buy that go on to keep buying it. It's working for the majority of people. It can work for you. You don't have to live in constant pain. Go to relieffactor.com. All right, Jason.
The anti-Semitism coming out of the Democratic Party is absolutely insane right now. They're not even trying to hide it. It's ridiculous. You were talking about that a little bit on your show, Glenn. But I was looking back and seeing where a lot of this started to materialize, and a lot of it began in the Obama administration. There was times before that, but it really hit a fever pitch during the Obama administration. And I started looking at some of the things that was going on then. The Center for American Progress was probably the biggest influencer, I think, on the Obama administration. Would you guys agree with that?
Fair.
And for people who don't know, they're a liberal think tank. Before it was probably Heritage Foundation was probably the biggest one that had the most influence.
For Republicans, yeah.
For
Going back to
Republicans,
Reagan,
yeah.
sure.
But Center for American Progress is really taking the lead for people like Obama.
They wrote the stimulus bill, and they wrote the health care bill, really. They were the main architects behind them.
I went back and looked at a few things that the Center for American Progress was doing around that time. And around about 2012, the Obama administration actually had to take a step back from them because they were like, people were starting to point out that there was some writers for them that were writing some anti-Semitic things. A lot of this stuff just pretty much got brushed under the rug. Not too many people, do you guys even remember that?
No.
A lot of people didn't even, had no clue. Looked into it a little bit more, and I found that there was a leaked email that a Jewish Post, I believe, got a hold of. And they actually got someone that was with the Center for American Progress and admitted, okay, yeah, there's, and this is an internal email that admitted that, yeah, okay, what they're saying out in public is anti-Semitic. I'm just basically going to tell them not to do this anymore. So he didn't fire them. He didn't do anything else. Just basically said, tone down what you have. And actually, what he was criticizing was what one of them had on their Twitter account, like bio page. So he was like, okay, yeah, I've counseled him and we're moving on. That guy, his name is Faiz Shakir. And Faiz Shakir is, he was a vice president with Center for American Progress. He actually created Think Progress, which was their internet, mouthpiece
really
for it.
Vile.
He created that, but he's a very bigwig. He was a senior advisor for Nancy Pelosi. He was a senior advisor for Harry Reid. He moved on to be the political director at the ACLU. Who have also kind of moved in some weird directions lately, even more as of late. And I started looking into Faiz a little bit more. Faiz Shakir he went to Harvard, and while he was at Harvard, he was a member of the Harvard Islamic Society. I've got I think this is the article here that I looked up. The Harvard Islamic Society back in 2000 when he was there. They hosted a lot of Muslim Brotherhood type people. He also co-chaired while he was there a fundraiser for the Holy Land Foundation, co-chaired a fundraiser for the Holy Land Foundation. And for people that don't know who they were the ones that were caught by the FBI, designated as a terror organization. Their job was to funnel and raise money to send to Hamas to fight and kill Jews.
At the same time, CARE's job was to be the U.S. PR firm that could separate the Holy Land Foundation and Hamas and say, oh, that's Islamophobia. So they were all in it together.
1 year later, after that article was published that I just showed, they were designated as a terror group. This guy knew exactly who he was fundraising for. I don't buy for a second that he didn't know. He knew exactly who it was. I looked in a little bit more, and he also co-wrote this thing called Fear Incorporated, which was a report sent out to try and say that, look, Islamophobia is, and this is not a direct quote, but it's almost a direct quote. It says Islamophobia is the product of a Jewish conspiracy. He liked to write favorably about multiple Muslim Brotherhood heads. This one right here, this Rashid Ghanouchi. He's the head of the Muslim Brotherhood in Tunisia. This is something he said. There are no civilians in Israel. The population, males, females, and children, are the Army Reserve soldiers and thus can be killed. Absolutely insane. Now, this is the guy working for Center for American Progress, who was working for the ACLU. And if you think things are bad now, guess where he's at now? He's the campaign manager for Bernie Sanders.
Wow.
That's who this guy is.
Oh my
I haven't seen a single person talk about this guy and what the ties he has, the people he's hung out with, and the actions he's actually done. They're just moving on to business as usual. Now you wonder why people like Nancy Pelosi invites a Muslim Brotherhood affiliated cleric to come give a speech or a prayer in Congress. They're like, where'd that come from? Well, her senior advisor was this Faiz Shakir guy.
That's unbelievable.
It all fits together. It all fits together. We have to start exposing these people, pointing out who they are, shedding a light on them. That's the only way we're going to be able to stop this.
All right, back in a minute. Jason, as you heard, just uncovered something huge that is not being reported on anywhere in the mainstream media. That is why BlazeTV is so important right now. If you have not subscribed, you can go to blazetv.com and use promo code NEWS. You will get $10 off of your annual subscription. This is huge. No one's hearing it. You're not going to hear this kind of thing unless you are members, unless you subscribe. So go there now, and Overtime starts next.